Welcome to Disney Coast to Coast, a show celebrating and questioning one of the most beloved entertainment companies in the world through honest, passionate, and clear-eyed Disney discussions. I'm Jeff DePauli, your entertainment-obsessed host with rose-colored glasses removed. I want to vomit. Yes, wow. That is how this episode is starting. I want to vomit, and not because I have to talk to Kyle Burbank for a second time this week, but because Disney's CEO Bob Chapek just had his contract extended for another 3 years. How are you, Kyle?
Is this the first ever emergency edition of DCTC?
This is, and let me explain. Folks, if you're listening to this, number one, you're going to notice it probably sounds a little different. I'm not doing the normal House of Mouse headlines intro, all that stuff. That's because this is not this week's normal House of Mouse headlines. The way that it works is Kyle and I record on Monday nights, and about 30 hours later, on Wednesdays at midnight, that episode is released. It's the Disney news, and listen, between those 30 hours, it's not abnormal for a pretty big piece of news to come out and even contradict what we say sometimes, which, happens, semi-often, just because there's a lot of Disney news that comes out. This is the first time that within those 30 hours, there's this piece of news that I was just like, we have to talk about this, right? Like, we cannot wait 2 weeks to talk about this. I've already gotten the social media tweets and stuff asking, what do you think? So yes, this is the first emergency House of Mouse headlines news. Make sure you listen to the real episode as well. But Kyle, this was not welcome news. I am sick of, small groups of people making horrible decisions that most people are against. This is becoming a trend.
Well, can I offer you a small not a condolence, but a consolation?
Yes, please. Let's hear it. I'll take anything.
Well, just because he has a contract doesn't mean that he gets to stay in the position. He could still be fired. It just means he's going to get paid out. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying it doesn't necessarily mean when you look at it on paper that you're like, okay, we'll extend it for 3 years, so he's in until at least 2026. It's not necessarily what that means.
I have zero faith in this board of directors at this point. Zero.
Oh, do you want to fire them? Like, I saw someone saying that they should fire them. That's not how it works. You can technically fire them, but it's through shareholder votes. So if you want to fire them, you can buy stock and vote against them, but good luck with that as well.
Yeah, I voted against it at the last vote around.
And I'm sure your 10 shares or whatever you have really impacted.
It's just so gross. So here's what's even grosser. The board of directors unanimously voted to give Disney CEO Bob Chapek a 3-year contract extension. So that now goes through February of 2026. I was legit counting down till February 2023. I was ready to say goodbye. Kyle, what was your initial reaction when you saw this, aside from, oh God, I gotta call Jeff?
Well, there was, oh gosh, I gotta call Jeff. But no, I don't think this was necessarily surprising. I know that we talked about how that weird statement that Susan, I forgot her last name, the chairman or chair, they call her chairman of the board, so I'm going to call her chairman of the board. She put out that statement after Peter Rice got fired and voiced their full support for Bob Chapek, and we wondered whether or not this was like a thing where it was, oh yeah, no, we're totally happy with this, and then they fire him. I think it really just comes down to the fact that even though things haven't gone great in many aspects, the company is still making money, and they don't have a replacement. I think they'd rather stick with the devil they know rather than try to find another one at this point. So I think this buys them more time to do that if that's what they want, and gives him more time to prove himself. I think Disney Plus is obviously going to be a big part of that. But the parks have been making more money. So
yes, they have, because the parks cost more than ever for numerous reasons, a lot of them upcharges. And I'm sorry, but the parks are in the worst condition they've been in my life. Well, that's not fair. They were in bad shape in the early 80s, but it was for very different reasons. It's not a good guest experience right now. I have specifically chosen not to give my money to the Disney parks. I haven't spent money at the Disney parks post-pandemic. The only exception was Oogie Boogie Bash. My sister was in town. I enjoyed that party. I said, sure, let's do it. Other than that, and listen, I know I'm in a privileged position. I get to go to the parks for free a decent amount. Put your money where your mouth is. If you're as angry as me, you need to. This board only cares about the dollar bottom line. That's it. They do not care about the brand or the integrity of the company. They're so short-sighted. I think they've set up a horrible long-term plan for the Walt Disney Company. I think they're in really, 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 really bad shape. And this is just, I'm sick of hearing, oh, he weathered the storm of the pandemic. No, he lucked out that Disney had this new toy called Disney Plus that worked out really, really well for them. Because if that didn't exist, there was nothing successful. Obviously it was a bad situation, right? Like the parks couldn't be open. That was horrible. But I'm sick of hearing, oh, he's weathered the storm so well. No, he hasn't. He has ruined the brand's name. I'm disgusted. I really am.
I do like on the same day that this came out that news about Bob Iger's next book is also coming out, and it's about which is all about leading companies through crisis and stuff like that, and specifically the pandemic. And it's like, well, is your top tip to step down a month before the S hits the fan?
See the future, pay attention to China, and jump ship before you get caught in the storm.
So I thought that was pretty funny. I will say I don't have a lot of nice things to say about Chapek, but I do think there's probably more nuance to it that we don't know about in terms of what the board thinks. And then also, another argument I've been seeing a lot come up is people seem to love Josh D'Amaro, even though he's in charge of the parks. So, I mean, you don't know from day to day which decision is his and which decision is Chapek's, or that they're not making them together. But
he does not make decisions. He's a puppet, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's a nice conspiracy theory, Jeff. But people, he has to be making some decisions. Like, I'm sure that there's frustrations that he has, but he would do things differently. But some of these decisions have to be coming from him, or he's the one implementing them. So if he's a puppet, then he can leave. But
even if he is making those decisions, they're getting okayed by the upper. And listen, I don't disagree with you, because I do feel like in the past, when Bob Iger was in charge, there were a lot of people, whenever something went wrong in the parks, everybody was like, oh, Chapek runs the parks. I completely agree with you on that. Like, I do feel like Josh D'Amaro gets away with murder, because if it were still Iger in charge and Chapek running the parks, we would put all the blame on Chapek. 100% agree with you. But I've lost a lot of respect for Josh D'Amaro as well. I'm sad, and the whole excuse of, well, this will give him more time to find a better replacement if that's what they want to do. They had 3 years. They had 3 years to find a replacement. Anyway, that's my stance on it.
Well, I don't think, if they thought he was right for the job in the first place, then it's not like they're like, well, we'll put him in just to, make him the scapegoat for this COVID thing that's going to happen, and then we'll find somebody else. Like, I don't think that was ever a viable option. I think they kind of had to have some faith in him and give him a fair shake. It's not a Conan situation where it's like, well, yeah.
I wish it were a Conan situation. And frankly, this is the first time that it were I wish it were whatever that sports analogy was, with the whole, saying we have their back and then firing them thing.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Like I said, still can happen.
I'm flabbergasted at this point. So, I mean, I really don't have much more to say. Listen, anybody listening to this who's listened to the podcast for any length of time, I'm sure is not surprised by this. I'm just really disappointed. And I was fearing that it was heading in this direction, because frankly, I had the same hope that, oh no, they wouldn't actually put this man in charge, would they? And then Bob Iger puts him in charge, and I'm like, oh man. So it's not good. I just don't think it's good for the brand. I really think it's gonna do long-term damage, and maybe I
think you're probably too close to it.
Am I?
I don't know. I know you can notice a difference. I don't know if people who only go however many times, maybe they enjoy Disney Genie Plus. I don't know.
I don't think that's the case. Because if that were the case, the amount of surveys going out asking questions about their enjoyment of Genie Plus, the amount of like regular changes happening to Genie Plus, you don't do that to programs that are successful. The program might be making money, but it's not satisfactory. And frickin', as much as I didn't like the upcharge of Max Pass worked. It's annoying that they weren't just like, okay, Max Pass Walt Disney World, if that's what you want to do. If you want to charge for this stuff, I don't know. It just really makes me sad that like a place I used to go to at least twice a month, I'm now just like, meh, because it's just, I used to never understand when I would hear like the old school Imagineers talk about, I don't really go to Disneyland because it's just really not what it was for me. And I just feel like I've reached that point. And it's not because I don't like theme parks anymore, because I very much enjoy the competition and I'm happy to give them my money. And I'm not saying Disney doesn't make great product. Of course they do. I just can't stand the way it's being run and the people who are running it. And it's frustrating as all hell, but apparently nobody cares. What is Phil? Let's bring in Phil DeFranco again for a second. What is he? The bringer of sadness?
Yeah, the bringer of sadness.
I am the Disney bringer of sadness. Oh boy. Anyway, anything else you want to add about this?
We'll see what happens.
You're so nice. You're so nice.
I will say,
I've seen it
you're
for 3
doing it
years.
right. Like you're sticking by your convictions. It's like I made a meme. I put some words over it. You know that the meme of Eric Andre and he's shooting Hannibal Buress, and then it's like, why would whatever do this? And it was like I put on the first image of him shooting the gun like Disney fans, and then the dead body was Disney fans who complain but keep giving their money to Disney, and then it was like, why would the company keep doing this?
Honestly, that's my frustration, because we all know it's the bottom line. That's all they care about. It's the bottom line. If you really have an issue, at least as much as an issue as I do, or I don't even think you need to have as much as an issue as I do, just stop spending your money with them. And I'm not saying you have to never do anything Disney ever again. That's not the case. But let's face it, us Disney fans, if you're spending an hour a week listening to my voice talk about Disney, chances are that you're spending a good amount of money every year on the Walt Disney Company. Cut it in half if you're annoyed. Just cut it in half, because trust me, they will feel the pain at that point if enough of us do it, and that's the only way changes are going to be made. Gosh, bring back Michael Eisner. That's all I'll say. Please, Michael, please.
So this is cyclical. So you're saying like in a good 30 years, we'll be like, man, that Bob Chapek really got a bad rap. He really saved things.
No. Give us the first 10 years of Eisner, okay? I'll take Eisner for 10 years. We don't need the second half of 10.
Maybe this will be a reverse Eisner.
I don't have the
now
patience
it's going to be the Chapek. Don't you feel bad as a fellow bald man that you need to support other?
I'm tempted to cosplay as him at the expo, and I don't know. I'll just hand out bills to people or something. I'll be like, $15 for a picture with me. I don't know, man. It's
No, you just got to keep your arms wide open.
I'll keep my arms wide open with a smug grin, with a name tag that says Bob Paycheck, and I don't know. I would get kicked out of the expo. Pretty sure I would. Ugh. Anywho, shall we move on?
Yeah, why don't we? Let's do that.
Yeah, there's a couple stories we're just going to touch upon real quickly, because frankly, I didn't want this whole episode to be negative energy, of which it is. So I apologize for yelling in your ears, but hopefully you tune in to hear this crap. Anyway, we were talking about on the other episode, the real House of Mouse headlines episode, we're talking about all the Christmas festivities, and we did mention how Shanghai Disneyland didn't make any announcements, and you had said that, they're still closed. Well, good news, Shanghai Disneyland is reopening June 30th. This will be with limited capacity, social distancing, health measures such as the Shanghai Health QR code. So, we all went through this in the States, right? So we know what this is like. Unfortunately, they seem to be a couple years behind. And
well, they're not a couple years behind. It's a restart, really.
Yeah. They
were the first park to close. They were the first ones to reopen, and then stayed open for up until this past March. And then I'm sure a lot of people know what happened in Shanghai as far as this last lockdown, and how it's not like the lockdowns in the States. It was, by all measures, far more intense in an actual lockdown. So it's good that Disney is reopening, but it's also good that the people of Shanghai aren't living under those conditions anymore.
Yeah, which I hear, and I really don't follow it super closely, not as closely as I do unimportant Disney news, but I hear it was like very much political lockdown. Like it really was, like their numbers were extraordinarily, like wasn't it one case of COVID or something?
Well, they had a zero COVID policy. People were, they'd quarantine buildings and you could not leave. They would drop off food at, I don't know of what quality food, but, people weren't allowed to leave. They would arrest you if you left your apartment. A report, I mean, I didn't research this too much, I will admit, but from what I've seen, it was really intense. So
yeah, well, I'm happy, even more so than Shanghai Disneyland reopening. I'm happy that the people of Shanghai are, getting back to a slight semblance of normal. So that is good news to negate the bad earlier news. And still, obviously, no Christmas announcements or anything. They're not even thinking about that.
Just came out.
But it is good news that that's happening, and that's a slight correction from the normal House of Mouse headlines. I also want to mention real quickly, we got a teaser trailer for Hocus Pocus 2. Kyle, did you watch? Did you enjoy? I know you don't like the original, right?
I don't care for the original. I watched right before we started this call. Sam Richardson is in the movie, who plays Richard Splett on Veep. I like him, so I was excited to see him in this teaser trailer. Definitely a teaser trailer. Like it wants to show you as little as possible while still hyping you for this film. Did it do that for you as a fan?
I have seen a longer trailer. I wasn't supposed to, but I did. So I have seen more than what this actually shows. I gotta say, between this and the other thing I saw, like it looks good to me. I'm excited. I mean, through the grapevine, I heard unofficially off the record that it did a test screening and got like a 97%, which is massive. So people are loving, and it's not done. The effects aren't done. It's not a complete movie at this point, but it has a beginning, middle, end, and apparently people are loving it. I've not seen, a full version of it by any means, but it's testing really, really, really well. Apparently they're expecting it to get people to subscribe to Disney Plus. I keep kind of holding out that if it keeps testing this well, they'll do it in theaters. My guess is I'll probably have an opportunity to see it on the big screen. I assume the El Capitan's going to show it. But for most people, I think Disney Plus is going to be the route. It sounds like it's doing really, really well. So,
it comes out September 30th, right?
Yeah, September 30th.
So that gives them, I could foresee them, I mean, they'd have to negotiate it with the theaters, which is the hard part. But if they did, a couple weeks exclusive on Disney Plus, but then for like that last week, that Halloween week, if they did like a 1 week only in theaters run, I don't think that's impossible. It's that they'd have to four-wall it, which means that they'd have to basically rent the theaters and take all the money. And they'd have, like I said, they'd have to find theater partners who are probably not very happy with them that they didn't put it in theaters in the first place. But I think that's an interesting idea.
But not in France. Because their systems are, well, we got it. If you don't know what we're talking about, listen to a couple House of Mouse headlines ago. But yeah, the one thing I'm excited about, I should say the one thing I was disappointed about when they initially started shooting and stuff is that none of it was shot in Salem, Massachusetts, unlike the original where they shot for a week or a week and a half there. And, I think Salem is a character in the film. I think that it looks like Salem. I think they did a very good job, from what I've seen, making it look like, Salem, Massachusetts, Halloween-y, autumn. It looks good. So I'm looking forward to it. I mean, listen, the girls have aged. There's no hiding that. You can tell the makeup's a little thicker on their faces. The one thing I find a little weird is, Kathy Najimy has clearly lost a considerable amount of weight since the first film. These are the same sisters. They're dead, so like their form should not change. I'm a little surprised they didn't put her in like a suit to make her look heavier. I don't know. Would that be disrespectful? I don't know.
It would not be great, I would say. I think you just have to go with it.
I just have to
I'd
accept
feel weird
that
being like, hey, so you know how you lost all that weight? Well, you were
I'd
a
be
little bit
honored.
bigger back in the 90s, so we're going to have to make you wear this. And hell no, I worked this hard to get this way. I'm not going back to that.
I'd be honored if someone was like 29 years ago. You look better now than you did 29 years ago, so we're going to need to change that for continuity's sake. I'd be like, go for it. But, it's not a huge deal, but it is a little bit weird because she's not like a heavy woman anymore. And good for her. She did the work and made it happen. So, yeah. In any case, those are the two bits of good news. So I hope you enjoyed this rant of an episode. And Kyle, thanks for taking the time to hop on here last minute to record it. I'm sure the wet little ears we're in are grateful. And I want to remind everybody, once again, this is not the normal House of Mouse Headlines episode, so don't miss that, where we're talking about the Adventures by Disney trip around the world to all 12 Disney parks and so much more news. Make sure you go back in your podcast feed because this one will pop up as the newest episode, most likely for you. And we'll talk more news in 2 weeks. Who knows? Maybe he'll be fired by then. We'll see what happens.
That's how it's going to work. It'll happen right in the middle of the episodes.
Oh, man. Anyway, Kyle, thank you so much. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Disney Coast to Coast is produced and hosted by Jeff DePauli. Learn more about the podcast and become a supporter at DisneyCoastToCoast.com. This podcast is part of the Podcast Network. Learn more about this show, plus find more quality and entertaining podcasts at depodcastnetwork.com. That's DEPodcastNetwork.com.